when Dorian Hawthorne's face appeared before my eyes. I thought I was still trapped in the nightmare I had just had. It was not until the director of the orphanage, with a stern expression, called out to me, "Arya Lowell, why are you hiding here?" and fell asleep, that I snapped back to reality and realized that everything in front of me was not a dream. Seeing me standing there in a daze, the director reached out and pulled me out of the wardrobe. She adjusted my collar and pushed me in front of Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne. "You were asleep, and young Master Hawthorne told us not to wake you up. Everyone has been waiting for you for quite a while." Dorian Hawthorne, who had been mentioned, was standing in front of Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne. There was a faint smile on his face as he looked at me at this moment. He seemed somewhat different from the Dorian Hawthorne in my memory who had always been so cold towards me. He took the initiative to greet me. "Hello, Arya Lowell." I don't know why, but when he pronounced the name Arya Lowell, there was an indescribable strangeness about it. I furrowed my brow and diverted my gaze to avoid meeting his inside. I was wondering why, when they could have chosen someone else, they had insisted on waiting for me. "What do you want with me?" I asked. The director bent down and explained to me. "They want to adopt you, Arya Lowell. You're going to have a family now, with a father, a mother, and an older brother." The director, who usually rarely smiled, now wore a rare smile on her face. I guessed that she was probably happy for me. For a child in an orphanage, being adopted is a stroke of luck. But the director didn't know that I had been reborn. I had known for a long time that Dorian Hawthorne would come to the orphanage today to choose a younger sister, which was why I had deliberately hidden in the wardrobe. "Damn. Arya Lowell, would you like to come home with us?" Genevieve Hawthorne took my hand gently and said, "Dorian Hawthorne has always wanted a younger sister. You can be his sister from now on." This scene was exactly the same as in my previous life. Memories of the past flashed through my mind like a slideshow. I immediately pulled my hand back and looked up at the director. "Director, I don't want to be adopted by them." As soon as I said this, everyone was taken aback. Dorian Hawthorne reacted the most strongly. He furrowed his brow and asked me, "Why?" "Because I don't want to be your sister." Even though I had rejected him, there was not the slightest hint of anger on Dorian Hawthorne's face. Instead, his tone became even gentler with a trace of barely noticeable affection. "Well, if you don't want to be my sister, how about just coming back to the Hawthorne family with me and living together? Is that okay?" The director secretly tugged at my sleeve, but she still couldn't stop me from rejecting Dorian Hawthorne again. "No." I thought Dorian Hawthorne would give up then. But when the director asked Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne if they wanted to choose another girl, Dorian Hawthorne suddenly said loudly, "Mom, I want her." She added, "Only she looks the most like my sister." At that moment, when I knew I had been chosen, I felt that fate was truly favoring me. I was taken back to the Hawthorne family, renamed Arya Lowell Genevieve Hawthorne, and I grew more and more like a real mother and daughter. It wasn't until Dorian Hawthorne's engagement party that he was drugged, and I happened to burst into his room when Mr. Hawthorne saw me and Dorian Hawthorne. He was so angry that he fainted. Mrs. Hawthorne slapped me across the face. "I shouldn't have brought you to the Hawthorne family in the first place." Dorian Hawthorne stared at me in silence, and there was an emotion in his eyes that I couldn't understand, but I thought he was probably regretting it too, regretting choosing me as his sister in the first place. I don't know what's going on. I didn't drug my brother. I tried my best to explain, but no one believed me. After that, every time Dorian Hawthorne betrayed me and our marriage, he would say, "You resorted to drugging me just to marry your own brother. All of this is your retribution now." Dorian Hawthorne hated me. So, after we got married, he always liked to embarrass me in public. Many people in our social circle were betting on how long our marriage would last, that most a year. Once the baby is born, Dorian Hawthorne will dump you. After Dorian Hawthorne left with his parents, the director called me to her office. I was silent for a long time before casually coming up with an excuse. "I don't want to leave." "Arya Lowell, you think too poorly of me." In this life, I had only met him 2 or 3 times, but Dorian Hawthorne's attitude towards me felt an indescribable sense of familiarity. I just want to help you. As long as you agree to come home with me, I'll pay off all the director's medical expenses. Last night, there was a fire in the orphanage, and the director was severely burned while trying to save us. I let out a cold snort and mocked, taking advantage of someone in a vulnerable situation. You think they're a good person? He said. I want to take you home to keep her company. I was skeptical of his words. After all, Dorian Hawthorne's behavior towards me was really abnormal. I asked him, "Is that all?" Dorian Hawthorne hesitated for a moment before nodding. That's all. Although I didn't want to get involved with Dorian Hawthorne, the director was still lying in the hospital bed. On the way back to the Hawthorne family's residence, Dorian Hawthorne kept talking to me, but I remained silent the whole time. He probably realized that he was being annoyed, so he softened his tone and tried to justify himself. The Hawthorne family can provide you with better conditions. It's definitely better than staying in the orphanage, no matter what. Daria Lowell. Don't blame me. I'm doing this for your own good. I'm doing this for your own good. Dorian Hawthorne had also said these words to me in my previous life. Dorian Hawthorne hated me for most of my previous life. It was only when I was on the verge of death that his attitude towards me softened a bit, but by then, no medicine could cure me, and I was only accompanied by a kitten every day. On one whim, when Dorian Hawthorne suddenly came back to the villa to visit me, he had someone throw away the kitten that I had been raising for half a year. As soon as the car arrived at the Hawthorne family's house, I saw Mrs. Hawthorne already standing at the door of the villa. Dorian Hawthorne had told her in advance that he would bring me back, so she had someone prepare a room on the 2nd floor early. Aria Lowell, this will be your room from now on. Mrs. Hawthorne took my hand affectionately. Do you like it? I lowered my eyes and stared at the hand that Mrs. Hawthorne was holding for a moment, then pulled it out. I was no longer the Aria Lowell from my previous life who had longed for a mother's love. In fact, it was because his bedroom was right next door. Before Dorian Hawthorne's engagement in my previous life, we got along quite harmoniously, even during my adolescence. When Mrs. Hawthorne asked me, Aria Lowell, what kind of boy do you like? I looked at Dorian Hawthorne, who had just come back from a run, and smiled. I like someone like my brother. His casual joke turned into evidence that I drugged my own brother years later. Every time I tried to explain myself, I didn't drug you, Dorian Hawthorne would choke my neck and retort. You said you liked me when you were 16, you liked me for so many years, and in the end, you even resorted to drugging me to force me to marry you. Why can't you admit it now? Perhaps because I was back in this villa. I dreamed of the events of my previous life that night, during the last days of my life in my previous life. The doctor said, "It's not a good idea for you to stay alone all day like this. Call your family and friends to come and keep you company." I don't have any family. As for friends, my best friend in the past, Isabella Montrose, was Dorian Hawthorne's engagement partner. Dorian Hawthorne personally went to the airport to pick her up and even organized a welcome party for her. Someone deliberately recorded a video of the party and sent it to me. The two of them were sitting closely together, passionately kissing. In a trance, I remembered that in my previous life, before the drugging incident, whenever Dorian Hawthorne introduced me to others, he would always say, "This is my sister Aria Lowell." I looked at Dorian Hawthorne, who was just a step away from me, and suddenly realized that he seemed different from the Dorian Hawthorne in my memory. He was neither like the Dorian Hawthorne from our childhood years nor the one who had always been vengeful and tormenting me later. My heart skipped a beat, and I suddenly thought of something. Dorian Hawthorne. Dorian Hawthorne. Just as I was about to stop Dorian Hawthorne and ask him my doubts, someone called his name at the same time as me. Dorian Hawthorne glanced at me, and then looked up behind me. I turned around as well. It was Isabella Montrose standing at the classroom door calling in. "Dorian Hawthorne, wait for me after school." I have something to talk to you about." After she finished speaking, Isabella Montrose noticed me standing beside Dorian Hawthorne. The look in her eyes when she looked at me was far from friendly. She sized me up as if she were sizing up a rival. "Are you the girl who was fostered in the Hawthorne family?" After all, she was my best friend in my previous life. Almost as soon as Isabella Montrose looked at me, I could feel her obvious hostility towards me. This was completely different from my previous life. In my previous life, once Isabella Montrose knew that I was Dorian Hawthorne's sister, she would affectionately link arms with me, call me Aria Lowell, and introduce me to her social circle. But now, her attitude towards me was similar to how she had treated me the last time I saw her in my previous life. That meeting had ended very unpleasantly. I asked her, "The surveillance footage shows that the only people who entered Dorian Hawthorne's room that day were you and me. I didn't drug him, so it was you, wasn't it?" At that time, I couldn't figure it out. She liked Dorian Hawthorne so much, so why did she want to ruin their engagement party? "Her name is Aria Lowell," Dorian Hawthorne answered for me. Isabella Montrose looked at me, gave a perfunctory smile, and didn't say anything more. After that, when I was sitting at my desk, I noticed that Isabella Montrose kept looking back at me. Even though I found it strange, I had no choice but to ignore her, turn my gaze back, and force myself to focus on the lesson. I didn't do well in my studies in my previous life, but Mrs. Hawthorne didn't seem to mind my poor grades. It seemed that the worse I did in exams, the happier Mrs. Hawthorne was. She would always say, "Aria Lowell is becoming more and more like N and she is not interested in studying either." Parents who truly love their children plan for their future. What mother in the world would want her daughter to be just a pretty but useless person? In the end, she had never truly regarded me as her own daughter. To her, I was probably just a consolation toy in this life. I didn't want to be like I was in my previous life, spending the first half of my life as a substitute for someone else's daughter and the second half as a useless canary, dying in despair. In my memory, the girls' restroom in high school was always crowded during breaks. But today, surprisingly, there was no one in line. It wasn't until I pushed open the restroom door that I realized something was wrong. Several girls inside turned around almost simultaneously and looked at me standing at the door. The one closest to me was Isabella Montrose. She threw away the cigarette butt in her hand, glanced at the girl who was lying on the ground soaked in dirty water, and then walked towards me. She smiled and said, "We were just joking with her. It was all in good fun. You won't tell Dorian Hawthorne, will you?" After everyone left, I took a look at the girl on the ground. Then I quickly averted my gaze and walked into a cubicle. When I came out again, the girl was standing with her back to me beside the mop sinks. He was only wearing a vest on her upper body, and she had put her original shirt under the faucet to wash it. Perhaps hearing the sound of me opening the door, she quickly wrung out the shirt, put it on directly, and then quickly ran out with her head down. As she passed by me, I suddenly reached out and grabbed her. The girl looked up at me in confusion, and I looked back at her. We stared at each other in silence for a long time, before I remembered that her name was Luna Chen. I took off my coat and threw it to her. "Your shirt is wet." "Wear mine." Luna Chen lowered her head again and refused. "No, thanks. A wet shirt is quite see-through. People will be able to see your vest underneath." My words made Luna Chen's ears turn bright red. She felt a bit embarrassed and raised her hand to cover her chest. After hesitating for a while, she finally took my coat. When I saw Luna Chen go into the cubicle to change her clothes, I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, I'm not the kind of person who likes to meddle in other people's affairs. In my previous life, just a few days after I transferred to the school, Luna Chen committed suicide by jumping off a building. The school's explanation was that it was due to family issues and excessive study pressure, but now, it seemed that the reason for her suicide might not be that simple. After all, it was a young life. "Thank you," Luna Chen said to me after changing her clothes. The words, "You're welcome," were already on the tip of my tongue. But I swallowed them back after thinking for a moment. I asked Luna Chen. You must be doing really well in your studies, right? I remembered that Luna Chen had been the top student in the grade before she committed suicide. She was taken aback for a moment and then nodded. It's okay, Luna Chen. I looked at the coat she was wearing. I lent you my coat, so you can help me with my studies after the small quiz. We'll change seats. And then we can be desk mates, which will make it convenient for you to tutor me. Luna Chen hesitated for a long time before finally agreeing to me. After school, Dorian Hawthorne stubbornly insisted that I go back with him in the car. As soon as I got in the car, Isabella Montrose stopped him. Dorian Hawthorne, can we talk? I wasn't interested in their business and didn't want to eavesdrop, but it was so quiet there, and Isabella Montrose was so emotional that she spoke loudly. Their conversation drifted into my ears with the wind. Isabella Montrose asked Dorian Hawthorne, "Did you break up with me because of Arya Lowell?" Dorian Hawthorne, "We've been together for so long. As soon as Arya Lowell showed up, you broke up with me. I can't think of any other reason besides her." Dorian Hawthorne's tone was somewhat helpless. "It has nothing to do with anyone. Xiao Yi, I just suddenly realized that I don't have romantic feelings for you. I've always regarded you as my sister." In an instant, I suddenly understood why Isabella Montrose had been paying so much attention to me today, and even kept looking back at me during class. "Mom, Arya Lowell doesn't like the piano. Please don't impose your hobby on her just because you like it," Dorian Hawthorne said. That night, Dorian Hawthorne just gave me an additional set of jewelry as a present. He seemed to have changed completely, becoming meticulous and patient with me. "Genevieve Hawthorne, I still need to study. I really don't have the time to learn the piano," I said. After dinner, as I was about to go back to my room to rest, Dorian Hawthorne stopped me. "Arya Lowell," he called. "After the quiz tomorrow, we'll choose seats according to our grades. Where would you like to sit?" Seeing that I didn't respond, Dorian Hawthorne continued. "About the fifth row by the window. I'm nearsighted. I can't see the blackboard clearly if I sit too far away," I replied. Luna Chen, who usually doesn't wear glasses, saw my skeptical look and explained frankly, "I don't have extra money, so I haven't gotten a pair of glasses." "Oh." I pursed my lips. "I thought you deliberately reserved this really bad seat for me, because you were afraid someone else would sit next to you." Luna Chen looked up from her test paper and told me frankly, "You're overthinking it." Whether I was overthinking or not, after school at noon, they still dragged Luna Chen to the opticians outside the school and forced her to get a pair of glasses. I justified it by saying, "If you can't see the blackboard and your grades drop, who will tutor me? Consider this pair of glasses as my payment for your tutoring." Anyway, it was Dorian Hawthorne's money he owed me so much. So, what was wrong with spending a bit of his money? I just wanted to get a pair of glasses for Luna Chen. Then, unexpectedly, I made her cry. Then, she was bullied by Isabella Montrose and the others. Luna Chen didn't shed a single tear, but when I put the glasses on her, she broke down in tears. Luna Chen kept choking back sobs and said, "Arya Lowell, I will definitely pay you back when I have money in the future." It took me a great deal of effort to soothe her, and we were on our way back to the classroom. Dorian Hawthorne stopped me in the stairwell. He questioned me. "Why didn't you choose the seat we agreed on?" "Who agreed with you?" I retorted impatiently. "Dorian Hawthorne, did I ever promise you anything?" Dorian Hawthorne fell silent immediately. He stared at me for a long time before speaking again. "Arya Lowell, why is everything so different now? Are you also?" I smiled and looked back at him. "Am I also what?" Unfortunately, Dorian Hawthorne didn't answer me. However, the news that he had stopped me in the stairwell reached his Isabella Montrose's ears after class. Isabella Montrose came over personally and warned me, Stay away from Dorian Hawthorne. Out of concern, Luna Chen also advised me. Aria Lowell, you'd better stay away from Dorian Hawthorne and try not to have any contact with him. To convince me, she also took the initiative to tell me the reason why she had been bullied by Isabella Montrose before. Dorian Hawthorne just asked me a question once, and Isabella Montrose said I was trying to seduce Maria Lowell. Isabella Montrose is not someone to be trifled with. I'm afraid she'll cause you trouble. I couldn't wait to stay away from Dorian Hawthorne. But he was like a persistent nuisance, always showing up beside me at unexpected moments. I let out a silence of putting down the exercise problems in my hand. I put my arm around Luna Chen, who looked worried, and comforted her. Don't worry. However, Luna Chen's worries soon came true. Shall we have a talk? Isabella Montrose blocked my way in the corridor. I originally wanted to refuse, but seeing the undisguised hatred in her eyes, it suddenly changed my mind. Sure, I said. Isabella Montrose's attitude towards me in this life was so different that sometimes I wondered if she, like me and Dorian Hawthorne, had also been reborn. What do you want to talk about? I took 2 steps closer to her and asked. Isabella Montrose didn't say anything when the voices in the stairwell grew louder. She tilted her head and glanced at me. She said distaphonially, "Nothing if you weren't fostered in the Hawthorne family. You wouldn't even have the right to talk to me." As soon as she finished speaking, she fell straight backward. Dorian Hawthorne, who was coming upstairs, happened to see her fall. "Aria Lowell, why did you push me?" Isabella Montrose cried and accused me. Her words made the classmates around who didn't know the situation cast blame FUL glances at me. Dorian Hawthorne frowned but remained silent. He looked up at me standing in the corridor and then asked several boys to take Isabella Montrose to the hospital. When Isabella Montrose left, she was still crying to Dorian Hawthorne. "Dorian Hawthorne, my leg hurts so much, will I never be able to dance again?" Dorian Hawthorne comforted her, a few words, and watched her leave. After everyone had left, Dorian Hawthorne walked up to me. He looked at me with a disapproving gaze and said, "Go and apologize to Xiao Yi." "Why should I apologize?" "She fell by herself," I retorted. Dorian Hawthorne let out a deep sigh. "Xiao Yi is a dancer. Are you saying she would sacrifice her leg and her future to frame you? Aria Lowell, I know you hate Xiao Yi, but that's all." He suddenly seemed to realize something and stopped speaking. I sneered and deliberately asked him, "Oh, what?" "Dorian Hawthorne, I just transferred to this school and I don't have any conflicts with Isabella Montrose, so tell me, why should I hate her?" Dorian Hawthorne looked at me in silence. The more he tried to hide the fact that he had been reborn, the more I wanted to expose him. "Because you know that I was reborn just like you, right? You know that Isabella Montrose did a lot of things to hurt me in the previous life, and you think I hate her, so I pushed her downstairs as revenge, right?" I thought that after saying all this, he would at least be more honest, but Dorian Hawthorne stammered for a long time and finally still denied it. "I don't know what you're talking about, but if you did something wrong, you should apologize. Come with me and apologize to Xiao Yi. Okay?" I was so angry that I laughed. "Dorian Hawthorne, you're still the same. Even if you get a new life, you're still a coward who deceives himself." He was too afraid to face the mistakes he made in the previous life, so he didn't dare to admit that he had been reborn. My words made Dorian Hawthorne's pupils tremble violently, but soon he turned his head away and refused to meet my gaze. I'm going to check on how Xiao Yi is doing." After saying that, he turned around quickly. I wasn't sure if he was really worried about Isabella Montrose or just wanted to get away from me as soon as possible. I wasn't going to let him off so easily. I chased after him. A few steps. "Since you think I pushed her, of course I have to go and see her. By the way, I'll make her think again about whether I really pushed her or not." When Dorian Hawthorne and I arrived at the hospital, Isabella Montrose already had a cast on her leg. Lying on the hospital bed, as soon as she saw Dorian Hawthorne, She started crying. Dorian Hawthorne, the doctor said my leg is seriously injured. I'm so scared. When she saw me entering the room behind Dorian Hawthorne, she turned to me and accused, Aria Lowell, why did you push me? You knew I'm a dancer and my leg can't be injured. I listened to her quietly and then smiled and asked, Isabella Montrose, are you sure I pushed you downstairs? There were only the two of us at that time if it wasn't you. And who else could it be? She was so emotional that her acting was very convincing. I've been learning to dance since I was a child. Do you know how much I cherish my legs? You've ruined me. My parents won't let you, Aria Lowell. You're going to be expelled from school. Dorian Hawthorne patted Isabella Montrose's back soothingly and then turned to me and ordered again. Aria Lowell, apologize. I ignored him. Looking at Isabella Montrose, I continued, you thought there was no surveillance in the stairwell, so you could frame me. Right. Isabella Montrose, I suggest you find someone to look carefully, see if there's any surveillance nearby that you missed. Isabella Montrose's face froze for a moment. I saw this subtle expression. Isabella Montrose hadn't been reborn because if she had been reborn, she couldn't have known that the surveillance in the opposite teaching building could capture that area. I was a bit disappointed and was about to leave. Dorian Hawthorne was originally going to leave with me, but Isabella Montrose stopped him. Dorian Hawthorne, my leg hurts so much, will you stay with me? Dorian Hawthorne glanced at Isabella Montrose and then stopped me. Aria Lowell, wait for me outside. Like hell I would wait for him. I walked out of the hospital without looking back. Aria Lowell. I was called by Luna Chen, who was behind me as soon as I got back to school. She handed me a USB drive, panting. What's this? Luna Chen took several deep breaths and then said, I heard from my classmates about what happened between you and Isabella Montrose. There was no surveillance in the corridor to prove your innocence. I searched for a long time and finally found the surveillance in the opposite teaching building, which happened to capture what happened between you two. Isabella Montrose's father is one of the school's shareholders. I was afraid they would delete the surveillance footage, so I quickly went to the monitoring room and secretly made a copy. Instantly, a warm feeling welled up in my heart. I affectionately linked arms with Luna Chen and cocorously said, Luna Chen, you're so good to me. Luna Chen adjusted the glasses on her nose, even though she tried her best to hide it. I still noticed that the tips of her ears were bright red. She awkwardly suppressed the corners of her mouth and pretended to be cold. Hurry back to the classroom, the midterm exam is coming up soon. You need to focus on your studies. It was a pity that the surveillance footage that Luna Chen had painstakingly copied for me wasn't needed in the end. That night, Isabella Montrose was sneaking around in the corridor looking for the surveillance footage when Dorian Hawthorne and I, who had returned to school to pick up something, caught her red-handed. Before I could say anything, Dorian Hawthorne had already walked up to her and asked, What are you doing at school alone so late at night? Isabella Montrose stammered for a long time but couldn't come up with a proper excuse. I couldn't stand to see her embarrassed, so I kindly spoke for her. Of course she's not at ease, so she came back to look for the surveillance footage, I said. I also thoughtfully pointed to the opposite teaching building. The surveillance you're looking for is over there. It can just capture this area, but it may be too late for you to delete the surveillance now, because I've already made a copy. Isabella Montrose, I'm asking you one more time, did I push you? Isabella Montrose bit her lips. He looked at Dorian Hawthorne and found that he was staring at her. He said, You can still come to school alone with a cast on your leg. Isabella Montrose was so anxious that she almost cried. She explained incoherently and finally had to admit, Dorian Hawthorne, I'm sorry. I was so scared at that time that I thought Aria Lowell pushed me actually. I fell down accidentally myself. Dorian Hawthorne shook her off with a cold face and left directly. And next day, under my threat, Isabella Montrose admitted in front of the whole class that she had fallen down by herself. In the second semester of our sophomore year in high school, Luna Chen and I applied to live on campus together. She did it because her aunt had to leave the local area for work and was worried about leaving her alone. I did it because I was fed up with Dorian Hawthorne's false attentions. In this life, I didn't have a deep relationship with Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne. I just asked a few questions, and then agreed only Dorian Hawthorne strongly opposed it. He asked me, "Why do you have to live on campus?" While packing my things, I perfunctorily replied, annoyed. "It's more convenient to live on campus and I can study better." Dorian Hawthorne didn't say anything more, and there was a long silence behind me. Just when I thought Dorian Hawthorne had left, I heard him suddenly say, "You want to stay away from me, don't you? Aria Lowell, I really thought we could start over." You won't forgive me, you still hate me." I turned around and looked at Dorian Hawthorne. I asked him deliberately, leisurely, "Why should I hate you?" "Dorian Hawthorne, you're so strange. You said I hated Isabella Montrose before, and now you say," he continued talking to himself, "Aria Lowell, since God has given us a chance to start over, let's forget about the things in the previous life and start anew, okay?" Dorian Hawthorne was really the worst. I suppressed my anger and glared at him. "Dorian Hawthorne, it wasn't you who was hurt in the previous life, and it wasn't you who lost everything. So, you can easily say that we should forget those hurts and start over. But why should I forget? And why should I start over with you?" The person who caused the harm can casually say sorry and try to erase all the pain the victim suffered and get forgiveness with just these 3 simple words. He really has a naive thought. Dorian Hawthorne still didn't give up. "Aria Lowell, I'll make up for everything you lost in the previous life, in this life. Okay? Before my engagement in the previous life, you said that you thought as long as you're willing to let go. In this life you can be good friends with Isabella Montrose again. Just like before, and we won't be siblings anymore. Mom and Dad won't object to us being together. Well, I'll get married after graduating from university and Mom and Dad will love you as their own daughter. And we can live a happy life together. Aria Lowell, you can still be the happiest girl in the world. Let's start over, shall we?" I refused him with a cold face. "No. I can never be friends with Isabella Montrose in this life, and I will never marry you." She tried to ingratiate herself with us several times, but both Luna Chen and I ignored her. It was the day before the final exam. Luna Chen and I were reviewing in the dormitory when Isabella Montrose suddenly burst in, crying and shouting at us. "I on earth do you to hate me? I've already apologized to you and have been trying to please you. What else do you want? Today is my birthday, yet I have to endure your cold looks in this shabby dormitory. I begged my mom to pick me up, but Dorian Hawthorne wouldn't let her. He forced me to be friends with you. I don't want to be friends with you at all. I hate you so much, since I was old enough to understand things. My mom has been asking me to please Dorian Hawthorne and make him like me, so that I can marry him in the future. I've been working so hard on all these things. But why, Aria Lowell? Did all my previous efforts go down the drain as soon as you showed up?" Luna Chen and I looked at each other in surprise as we watched Isabella Montrose sitting on the floor, breaking down and crying. Luna Chen pulled me out of the dormitory. She asked me, "Do you think I'm being too cold-hearted towards Isabella Montrose?" I shook my head and told her, "She bullied you. You have every right to treat her the way you do. No one can ask you to forgive someone who has hurt you." In my opinion, Luna Chen was already kind enough, at least when she left the dormitory. She even threw a note to Isabella Montrose, who was crying, and then changed her seat to sit behind me. On my birthday, Dorian Hawthorne gave me a wristwatch worth more than 3 million. I didn't refuse and happily accepted it after all. My fostering relationship with the Hawthorne family would only last until I turned 18. There would be many places where I'd need money after leaving the Hawthorne family since he was willing to give it. I had no reason not to accept. The Hawthorne family had great influence in North City. Even for my birthday party, quite a few celebrities and socialites showed up. Some of the classmates in our class were invited by Isabella Montrose. I only invited Luna Chen. This birthday party was so grand and magnificent that Luna Chen and I both felt a bit out of place. We hid in the backyard together. What are your plans for the summer vacation? I asked. Luna Chen took a small sip of juice and replied softly. I plan to work part-time during the summer vacation and at least earn enough for my freshman year's living expenses. I rubbed the watch on my wrist and asked her to take me with her. Before I could finish my words, we suddenly heard a scream coming from inside the villa. Luna Chen and I rushed to the second floor. Dorian Hawthorne and Isabella Montrose had already dressed themselves. However, the ambiguous marks on their bodies and the messy bed in the bedroom made it easy to guess what had happened between them in this room before. Randall Hawthorne slapped Dorian Hawthorne in the face right in front of all the guests. How can you still have any sense of shame after doing such a thing? Isabella Montrose stood in front of Dorian Hawthorne, crying and pleading for him. Uncle, please don't blame Dorian Hawthorne. For a moment, the Hawthorne family was in chaos. Dorian Hawthorne saw me standing behind the crowd and tried to come over and explain to me. Most likely, the two families had already reached a solution when they left. They all had smiles on their faces and spoke politely. As I was passing by the study on my way back to my room to sleep, they happened to hear Randall Hawthorne say to Genevieve Hawthorne, "Let them get engaged in a couple of days. You should start preparing for the engagement party in advance." How is it impossible? I said sarcastically. Dorian Hawthorne, to be honest, in the previous life, if it hadn't been for your request, I wouldn't have even given someone like you a second glance. Probably because she was already engaged to Dorian Hawthorne. Isabella Montrose even leaned close to my ear and told me her secret. Actually, I was the one who drugged Dorian Hawthorne on your birthday. I glanced at Isabella Montrose and thought from the bottom of my heart that she and Dorian Hawthorne were really a perfect match. They could even come up with such a disgusting scheme together. I'll marry him and become a member of the Hawthorne family in the future. Harry Lowell? I don't actually like Dorian Hawthorne that much, but I have no choice. My parents are really eager to form an alliance with the Hawthorne family through marriage. Isabella Montrose told me with a tone of how many benefits there would be from marrying Dorian Hawthorne, but I remained indifferent throughout. No one knew better than me how painful it would be to marry someone like Dorian Hawthorne. After parting with Isabella Montrose, Luna Chen suddenly said, "Arya Lowell, you're right. No one suddenly turns bad, and no one suddenly turns good." She let out a sigh and said, "Fortunately, we haven't fallen for it." 4 years later, after graduating from undergraduate school, neither Luna Chen nor I chose to pursue a master's degree. We started our own business. On my 18th birthday, Dorian Hawthorne gave me an expensive wristwatch. I sold that watch, and became the startup capital for our business. With a bit of luck in these years and some memories from my previous life, Luna Chen and I managed to run our company successfully and made it thrive. I met Dorian Hawthorne again at a bidding site. Over the years, I had heard more or less the gossip about him and Isabella Montrose. They got divorced not long after they got married. At first, Isabella Montrose didn't agree to the divorce, but Dorian Hawthorne always had various means. She was terribly tortured and finally had to give in. After the bidding ended, Dorian Hawthorne caught up with me in the parking lot. That was at a loss, and after hesitating for a long time, he only managed to say, "I'm sorry." Harry Lowell. I glanced at him. "If you really feel sorry for me, then withdraw from the bidding." Dorian Hawthorne paused for a moment and actually agreed. Okay. Even so, I didn't take it seriously. Dorian Hawthorne was extremely selfish. His sorry was always just empty words when it came to matters of interest. Dorian Hawthorne was clearer-headed than anyone else. I briefly told Luna Chen about today's bidding situation on the phone. Luna Chen let out a sigh and said, "The Hawthorne family is also participating. Do you think we don't stand a chance?" I said, "Not necessarily. The fact that the Hawthorne family has stooped to competing with a company like ours, which has only been established for a few years, Just shows that the Hawthorne family is really on the verge of decline. Just wait. We're almost certain to win this time. She let out a sigh of relief. I feel relieved now that you said so. Luna Chen trusted me deeply, she always did. As I expected, the bidding result announcement showed that we had won. I turned around excitedly and was about to find a quiet place to call Luna Chen and tell her the news, but when I looked back, I saw Dorian Hawthorne standing not far behind me. The sunlight outside shone through the glass window. I was standing in the warm light, while Dorian Hawthorne, just a few steps away, was enveloped in the shadow cast by the wall. He forced a smile and congratulated me. Congratulations. The corners of my mouth flattened. And I just felt annoyed on such a good day. How could I have run into such an annoying person? That Dorian Hawthorne was someone who lacked self-awareness. He seemed not to notice my disgust for him and continued. When you asked me to withdraw from the bidding last time, I told them to pull out as soon as I got back. So what? I frowned impatiently. Are you here to ask for a favor in return? Mr. Hawthorne, I just said it casually. I don't have that much influence to affect your decision, right? Dorian Hawthorne's nervousness was clearly visible. That's not what I meant, he stammered as he tried to defend himself. Aria Lowell, I just came here today because I wanted to see you and talk to you. There's no other intention. I just want to tell you that I'm willing to do anything you ask me to. I let out a cold laugh. Anything? Dorian Hawthorne nodded eagerly. Yes, I'll do anything you want me to. Sime, I said softly. Then never show up in front of me again, Mr. Hawthorne. Is that okay? After saying that, I turned and left after taking 2 steps. I couldn't help but look back. I just saw Dorian Hawthorne hunching over and trembling while putting a few pills into his mouth. He noticed my gaze and quickly stood up straight, hiding the medicine bottle behind his back. His eyes lit up as if he had seen a glimmer of hope. In fact, he didn't need to hide it because I didn't care whether he was sick or not, and I didn't care what medicine he was taking either. I just told him what I truly thought in my heart. Dorian Hawthorne, actually. What I want to say is that I wish you were dead, but I know you definitely wouldn't want that, so just stay out of my sight from now on this way. I can even deceive myself into thinking that you're really dead. After saying that, I didn't stay any longer. His decadent figure was reflected in the glass of the hall, looking like a melted chocolate ice cream. When Luna Chen and I were discussing the project, she casually mentioned the Hawthorne family, and I realized that I really hadn't seen Dorian Hawthorne for a long time. It was as if he had really disappeared. I couldn't help but recall that the last time I heard news about him was a year ago. The family member of a business partner said that he was ill. I didn't expect depression to be so terrifying. The young master of the Hawthorne family is basically ruined. The old master of the Hawthorne family had already retired, but now he has to come out again. His son was perfectly fine. Suddenly he got sick and has been hiding at home all day, refusing to see everyone. Mrs. Hawthorne even invited a Taoist priest to perform a ritual at their house. It's just like being possessed by a ghost. You can't stand the light or see people, and you have an attack with the slightest provocation. You haven't seen it. His attacks are really terrifying. Aria Lowell, Luna Chen poked my face. What are you thinking about? I smiled and shook my head, pulling my thoughts back and throwing myself back into work. Whether Dorian Hawthorne was doing well or not had nothing to do with me. I only knew that I was living a good life now. Luna Chen was like another me in the world. She understood me, supported me, and always believed in me. We shared the same values and our souls weren't, and everything I had wanted in my previous life had been fulfilled in this life. I often sighed that fate was truly partial to me.